Hello, my name is Michael Conneely, and I'm doing this brief video to tell you about my relationships astrology and to invite you to consider the benefits of having a relationships astrology reading. I feel there's great value in my readings because I combine Western astrology and Vedic astrology. It's a rich offering. I'm not that impressed by the Western astrology of relationships. It has merits, but all too often it is a matter of long computer-generated lists of aspects. It can't give overall perspective or quantification. It's not that it doesn't have merit, but the Vedic astrology of relationship is another thing altogether. It's much more sure, it is accurate, and it's quantified. It gives the couple real food for thought because it describes facets of the relationship and actually provides a scoring. And there's huge advantage to you in having the qualities and strengths or weaknesses of your relationship itemized and identified and even quantified. It's very helpful to have the difficulties highlighted so that you can agree to work on them. So I'm just going to briefly itemize the characteristics which Vedic astrology identifies in a relationship. And I think you'll see that there's really great merit in having this sort of reading. It can be so helpful in pointing to areas of breakthrough, areas of difficulty. Maybe it might even feel like extreme difficulty, but if we know what they are, we can sort of say, cut, it's happening again. We can go through it. We can change the script. And so basically what the Vedic astrology of love and marriage does is, first of all, is say, will there be respect between the man and the woman? And that's the doorstep. If there isn't respect, don't go further. And then it looks at wavelength, indeed 8 different facets of to what extent are the couple on the same wavelength. And there's actually an overall score out of 36. The first 8 points can be gained by looking at whether there's an excess or imbalance in the relationship. So, for example, might the couple be too prone to emotionalism? And if that's said clearly, that can be so helpful for sort of reducing those instances when they occur, for saying, oh look, it's happening again. Let's change. Is the couple too fiery or too intellectual? And a clear definition and a score from 0 to 8 out of 8 is given. The second facet is constructivism, so important. Will the couple be naturally constructive together? Or is the advice that you will have to make sacrifices if you want to succeed in the relationship? Thirdly, the temperament of the couple. Basically, there are 3 main sorts of temperaments. Deva, that's the person who's faithful, open, loyal and devoted. Manushya, practical, industrious purpose. And then the Rakshasa, the independent, eccentric person with something of a tendency to be able to break a relationship. It's so useful to have a scoring and an identification of how those temperaments are present and interreacting. Next, and a 4th characteristic of wavelength, very important, will they be friends? If they're not friends, they'll have to accept that there'll have to be certain separate areas which they can't both do. That will have to be understood, that will have to be accepted, and it's so well worth having it stated and scored. The 5th facet to wavelength is instinctive compatibility. What sort of patterns does the man fall back on in intense situations? What sort of patterns instinctively does the woman fall back on? And are those patterns compatible or incompatible and need, to be understood, learned about and identified? There's an assessment about whether the man will feel comfortable to the woman and be lucky for her, or whether he'll be threatening for her. The seventh of the 8 facets of wavelength is what's called innate giving. Will you be able to easily communicate your needs to the other partner? Will the other partner easily and naturally be able to meet them, or will there be a level of tuition and understanding needed? There's 2 points out of 36 on that facet. You can either get 0, 1 or 2. And lastly, for 1 point, what's called mutation. Is this a relationship which will be naturally inclined to make the needed positive changes or not? And if it is a sort of stuck relationship, that's well worth saying. Do you need to stick to the stuck pattern? Okay, so we look at those 8 facets and give a score overall out of 36. If it's below 18, perhaps don't bother.